Hey Trending Left followers, this podcast I'm about to recite to you will basically cover how and why myself and hopefully you guys and gals will join me in the good fight for progressive ideas, policies, and candidates going forward towards the 2020 Democratic primary elections and of course the big election in November of 2020. I cannot do this without your help and support, which is why, as annoying as I know it is, I am going to ask you guys for help to raise money to make our shared cause at Trending Left be as powerful, educational, inspiring, and widespread as it possibly can be, to pay for adequate growth of the website, Facebook page, Twitter, and YouTube channel. The cost of those operations is between $300 and $500 per month. To really bring you guys professional grade content, bring in help from others like myself who may have more experience doing this or more connections with leaders, along with one-time costs to acquire a good 4K camera, a good portable microphone in which to do daily video podcasts from anywhere, costs of getting tickets and press badges to get to the plethora of upcoming presidential rallies that will soon be coming to California, where I live, because California is a Super Tuesday state that will likely determine who the nominee is. The cost for that, not including gas or food or anything else for help with, would cost between $500 and $1,000 at least. I did not create Trending Left to be a profit-making venture. I simply have been heartbroken, enraged, and inspired ever since that dreadful 2016 election night. And because I have a decent amount of experience in the political journalism, writing, interviewing, and other similar arenas, along with my website and coding skills, I knew that I have both the mindset, the desire, and the ability to help get as many non-political people who don't vote and who are not involved in actually caring about who our elected representatives are and why voting for state and local elections matter even more than the big presidential elections at times like these. I am someone who has missed out on having friendships and relationships because how much I care about our political situation in our country, how much I write about it, how much I have to say about it. I'm not even joking. People have abandoned me and unfriended me for simply how I write in full paragraph form about these issues in emails or text messages, but I know that I am doing this for the right reasons, and if I don't do this, and if I don't use my skills, abilities, and my unique background, then I might be actually harming our democracy, at least locally in my community and district, where it is actually a toss-up district or community where it's 50-50 or a purple area where literally 20 to 50 votes could mean the difference between adequate healthcare access and adequate social safety nets locally and being on the street for many people in my community. So I really hope you enjoy this podcast and you subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you are able to make a donation and want to have peace in mind that your donation will be going to someone and something that is only going to spend your money on fighting this David versus Goliath fight that we progressives must have, I would sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate it if you donated via the PayPal button that can be found on the left side of the website at trendingleft.com and at the bottom of each and every article on the website. You can also become a member of our Patreon, which right now only has one member so far, but if you would like to support us via a monthly donation, please use the Patreon button, also found on the left side of trendingleft.com, under the PayPal button, and is also under the PayPal button on every article on the website. However, if you seriously cannot afford to donate even just $5 but want to, please don't feel like you have to, because I have been in your shoes where I only had $6 in my bank account and almost decided to donate $5 of it to help a progressive candidate running in my district. Trending Left exists for all of us who want to see our society, economic system, and healthcare system become as fair as possible so that we all have a chance to work hard and find success. So with that out of the way, let's get to my oral essay. And after you listen to this, be sure you like us on Facebook, Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, bookmark trendingleft.com, and go read our latest stories that we post every day. Today, I would like to take some time to talk about how we as progressives need to fight back against what we all know was going to happen once the Democratic 2020 campaign officially started after the first debates. That issue is of how the never-Trumpers / Republicans, columnists, pundits, and also the centrist establishment Blue Dog Democrats have successfully found their way onto virtually every single panel on every single show on the so-called liberal, quote-unquote, networks of CNN and MSNBC by positioning themselves as, quote, coherent, intellectual, and moderate members of the true conservative faction of the Republican Party, supposedly used to be before the Trump era began. It is because they are Republicans who have been against Donald Trump from the beginning that the media has given them way too much credit, because compared to the Trump cult / supporters, they seem a lot smarter, more moderate, and credible, and the mainstream media on cable news has simply let these people take up so much of the discussion on these panels, in lieu of actually having progressives talk about the Democratic Party. The mainstream media has let the Joe Scarboroughs, Bret Stephens, David Brooks, Steve Smits, before he cashed in to work for Howard Schultz, Bill Kristol, Tom Nichols, and a plethora of former aides and cabinet members of both Bush 41 and Bush 43 all get away with the things they helped do in the Republican Party decades ago that laid the groundwork for the Donald Trump presidency we are all enduring today, and are all treated as if they were simply ambushed and steamrolled over in 2016 and have played dumb like they had no idea that this or something similar of a horror show was coming. I do not believe people should get the majority of their news and information from just cable news channels or even from the majority of newspapers, despite whatever credibility they believe outlets like the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, The Atlantic, USA Today, LA Times, and more have. At least from the opinion side, their reporting is good. The only major newspaper outlet that is prominent in breaking major stories, that is credible across the board for the most part when it comes to their opinion pieces, and does not publish stories or columns that are full of both sides are to blame rhetoric, centrist establishment contributors, or reporters who are absolutely embedded in the Washington, D.C. bubble / beltway that actually does, for the vast majority of reporting, reports facts as facts, calls lies, and stays away from too much both-sider BS, is the Washington Post. If you look at the opinion columnist lineup for both the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, you will struggle to find any legit or progressive authors outside of Michelle Goldberg, Charles Blow, Nicholas Kristof, and sometimes Gail Collins or Frank Bruni from the New York Times. And no actual progressives are among the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, despite how their straight reporting is very good at times. You really only read the Wall Street Journal because of their polling along with NBC News. So instead of the mainstream media on CNN, MSNBC, and major newspapers having the quote-unquote liberal bias the right likes to always say it has, it's actually incredibly centrist, full of people who have no convictions about anything and have irrational and baseless fears of the left going too far to the left which plants him squarely in the center-right on the political bias spectrum if you were to account for how far right the Republican right-wing media has successfully dragged the goalpost over the past 40 years for the very reason of having major media outlets be called radically liberal left-wing when they're actually nowhere close to that. This is so that they can get the never-Trumpers, right-leaning centrists, and establishment blue dog Democrats like Claire McCaskill, or a stable of former aides or supporters of centrist Democrats like Joe Biden, 90s era Clinton, and Hillary Clinton in 2016 to a certain extent, to all have cushy, secure paychecks and jobs as talking heads on the major networks, so that to the majority of Americans who do not pay attention to politics at the same level that myself and most of you who are listening do, think that compared to these centrist pundits on cable news, candidates and representatives like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and now to a certain extent Kamala Harris, seem radically to the left by comparison. This is a very false narrative at its finest, and you have to give the right and their rich benefactors like the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, the Mercers, and all of the dark money that comes from the big oil companies, big health insurance, and big pharma companies a lot of credit for playing the long game over the past few decades and slowly but surely setting up our mainstream media to look like this, because they knew that we on the left haven't been as politically active, educated, inspired, or passionate as we should have been in the pre-Trump era. They've known for a long time that us on the left, especially under Obama, simply did not care about state and local elections or midterm elections, and that allowed for so many people on the Republican side to get elected, and at best, 0 progressive candidates got elected, and only a handful of moderate Democrats were able to take office, and basically then only be kind of useless for the cause of what we on the left actually want to do. But now is our time to turn that around, and it is why we must use the energy, the passion, the engagement from our progressive base, that if you actually were able to get everyone who is likely to be a left-leaning voter who is under the age of 40, especially millennials like myself, to all get educated about our policies, ideas, and candidates, and then if we could somehow get them all to vote, I truly believe we would find that the base of the Democratic Party is at least 50-50 progressives versus establishment moderate Democrats, and is only ... and wait for it, it is only trending to the left as more and more of the younger generation is engaged and becomes old enough to vote, energized by the absolute outrage of virtually everything that Republicans under President Trump have said and done. So my argument against the people who make up the majority of talking heads, opinion columnists, established centrist Dems like Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, along with their supporters and surrogates that appear way too often on mainstream media, and also to the people who I see comment on our criticisms of Biden and other centrist Democratic candidates, saying that trending left isn't actually here to support Democrats, but is instead to divide Democrats, or that I, at least myself personally, that I'm just another bot similar to the ones that were spread as propaganda during the 2016 campaign that brainwashed people into not voting or just not voting for Hillary, is this. First, the narrative that the mainstream media puts on the progressive candidates and representatives like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and AOC, which labels them as radical leftist and uses the word socialism, basically as a synonym for communism, because for the most part, the right has brainwashed them into grouping those two words together when they are entirely different, is a lie. It is a false narrative. It is intellectually dishonest, and it needs to be called out at every turn. It isn't just Chuck Todd who is guilty of pushing this false narrative on the major networks. It is virtually everyone on those networks who either is simply a straight reporter / host that lets panel members drive that false narrative into the mind of uneducated voters, or they are hosts like Chuck Todd, like Joe Scarborough, like Chris Matthews, like Chris Cuomo, like Andrea Mitchell, like Chris Cillizza, who is essentially CNN's Chuck Todd, even though he doesn't host a show, who all give this false narrative so much oxygen every single day. It is truly disgusting for we progressives who know our battle to fight against this is so uphill, and it's going to take many, many more smaller outlets like us at Trending Left, or the Majority Report with Sam Seder, the Young Turks, the Professional Left, and a handful of other progressive YouTube channels and progressive podcasts / blogs to work our butts off trying to spread the actual truth that I've laid out in this podcast to as many people as we can. And it's truly going to take a team effort by all of us and our supporters who help fund our work so that we can actually reach and educate as many people as we can, so that the next time they turn on Meet the Press or go into a voting booth in a Democratic primary election, they are woke and aware enough to know who to choose, so that we can take back some of that ground that the right and the Republican Party has ripped from under our feet via the bankrolling by their billionaire donors, who literally will spend $1 billion or more combined to both convince Republican voters that the Republican Party actually cares about them, and convince the public that moderate Democrats are actually radical leftists, which then makes progressives like us at Trending Left, who support the policy ideas and positions that come from people like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, all look like extreme, out-of-control radical liberals, when you and me both know all we want is make the playing field for all Americans a lot more fair through a better system that ensures healthcare as a basic human right, education being affordable regardless of your financial situation, so that people can learn how to get the tools necessary to be successful in life without having to worry about a mountain of debt or be afraid of what one major healthcare event can do to ruin the rest of their lives. And also pay people a livable minimum wage attached to inflation, so that people don't have to work 2, 3, or even 4 jobs, 60 plus hours a week just to have a tiny place to sleep at night, without ever having money to spend on things we as humans need to decompress and escape from the stress of life. Things as simple as going out to dinner and a movie, taking a vacation even just once a year. Humans deserve to have a good quality of life. And if they're all willing to work hard for it, but not so hard that it seems like they are working themselves into their own grave, and again, none of us have control over the healthcare needs that we might end up having at any point in our lives, and we all as Americans need to come together and agree that we are willing to go to a Medicare for all style system. Even if for some of us a little more comes out of our paycheck in taxes, knowing that the overall benefit in the long run for the entire society will be more than enough to offset the increased taxes on those who earn a certain amount in a year as income. So, I want to make it clear that the reason why, at least for me personally, Trending Left will not support a centrist candidate like Joe Biden or any candidate like John Hickenlooper, who is somehow dumb enough to think that Republicans are not going to call us socialist, regardless of who our candidate is, what their policies or ideas are, and how they describe themselves on the issues, is because people like them are a legitimate existential threat to the security of our ability to have secure health insurance, affordable costs of prescriptions, access to doctors for myself and millions of Americans who cannot even have a hope or prayer of being able to have anything close to a decent quality of life without having health insurance. Those who are paid millions and millions of dollars simply to push the false narratives that I've laid out for you to make our progressive ideas and values when it comes to Medicare for all, livable minimum wage, free or close to free access to education, along with securing adequate social safety nets for all of us, not because we aren't willing to work hard and earn our way to a better life, but because we who are informed on the issues know that hard work alone does not even come close to guaranteeing a decent quality of life under Republican policies. Being a hard-working American who has done everything in their power to do everything right is becoming almost meaningless for those of us who do not come from money, who do not have any way of paying for health care or education that we would need in order to actually chase and realize the so-called quote-unquote American dream. To help describe what I mean, I would like to say that I'm a big fan of the show American Pickers on the History Channel, which is a show about a group of collectors who collect antiques and cool stuff, go around the country looking to buy old original items that are half a century old or even more out of regular Americans' collections, and then resell them for a reasonable profit to keep their antique store or company going. It is a perfect and simple example of how a fair negotiation, goes down and leaves both the buyer and the seller happy with the outcome. When you start a negotiation, you never start out with the lowest number or figure that you're willing to compromise on. For example, if you have an item that has a max resale value of $800, and in order to make a big enough profit on the item for a resale and to run my business, I need to be able to get that item from you for no more than, say, $600. I would start my fair original offer at probably around $300, knowing that the seller, you, will make a counter offer, and hopefully we can compromise on a price of anywhere between $450 and my max $600. So when we apply this to progressive policy proposals, ideas like Medicare for all, free college tuition, livable minimum wage, and making sure our social safety nets like Social Security are more than solvent enough for the foreseeable future, candidates like Bernie Sanders, Warren, and AOC are proposing these progressive policies as their opening offer to the American people, the voters, that aren't even close to full-on socialism, but more like making things more fair for the average Americans to succeed as a socialistic supplemental way of fueling our capitalistic economic system and making its health a lot more secure, so that during recessions and downtimes, the impact is a lot less harmful to regular Americans. We all know that it will be almost impossible to actually pass every single part of these progressive policies and ideas as legislation if and when we have a President Sanders or a President Warren, and hopefully one day a President Ocasio-Cortez. There will have to be compromise. This is why the ACA, Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, ended up not having a public option, because back then something like that still required 60 votes from the Senate, and we had dreadful senators like Joe Lieberman who were unwilling to vote yes if a public option was included. And so at the end of the day, the interests of the big pharma and major insurance companies were succumbed to. And that is why Obamacare, which technically started out as first a Republican alternative to Hillary Clinton's healthcare proposal in the 1990s, and then it took form in the state of Massachusetts under a Republican governor by the name of Mitt Romney. But that is why, at the end of the day, the ACA ended up doing a lot of good by protecting people with pre-existing conditions, allowing kids to stay on their parents' insurance until age 26, which personally, that's what saved my life, and expanded Medicaid to millions of people who had never had health insurance before. But this only happened in the states that actually took the government exchange money to help supplement Medicaid, which then left virtually all of the residents in the red states out of getting the vast majority of the benefits that Obamacare offered. And it is because of the compromised framework of the ACA, again, originally a Republican idea, that today we have seen the Trump administration and very ruthless Republican governors try to pick apart what the ACA did virtually the same way these same red states have tried to pick apart abortion laws and abortion rights, which is the method of death by 1,000 paper cuts, cutting funding, locking off ways of getting clinics funding, and having insane building code laws for those clinics, etc. So if we don't use all of the energy and enthusiasm, the outrage against Trump and the Republican Party being revealed to be the monsters like myself have known it to be for over a decade, and much longer for the non-millennial progressives, if we don't take this opportunity while all of us are super engaged and are going to do everything we can to get as many people registered to vote, get them to vote both in the primaries, in the general elections, and the local and state elections, treat even the smallest elections, like I said, as just as important as the presidential elections, so that we are able to get tomorrow's progressive congressmen and congresswomen, tomorrow's senators, and tomorrow's presidents into their first elected office, so that they can start building a resume to become the leaders of us in the years to come. If we don't use this moment and this opportunity correctly, then I'm afraid that we may never be anywhere near to being as great of a nation that loves its people as we all know it could be. Please take me dead serious when I say this. There will never be another deplorable president like Donald Trump that makes it a situation where the vast majority of Americans, the type of people who literally couldn't name their Congress representatives, either of their senators, and couldn't tell you who the vice president was, to actually care and get engaged, get involved, and vote like they are now. Vote like they were inspired to do in 2018 when we had our great blue wave, when we had to put a check on this disastrous presidency. So if the Democratic Party can't have a spine today, or in 2020, when its base is at peak engagement and can't use this opportunity to actually get the people in power who actually care about people like you and me and are willing to fight to implement the policies that provide healthcare, education, livable minimum wage, adequate social safety nets, and a plethora of other common sense things that we will actually, for once in our lifetime, give the American people a playing field that is equal and as fair as it possibly can be for the time we live in, then people like me who have worked so hard and spent so much money trying to grow this cause will likely give up. If you let fear keep driving your decisions to support candidates like Joe Biden, Hickenlooper, Chuck Schumer, Pelosi, if you let fear cause you to not speak truth to power like I have in this 4,000 word podcast essay because you're afraid of what the mainstream centrist or right-leaning media will say about you, if you let fear brainwash your intelligent mind into believing that only an old white guy, a centrist like Joe Biden, can beat Trump in the 2020 election despite the gaggle of facts that say otherwise, then unfortunately I have to say that in that scenario, the Democrats deserve to lose in 2020 and beyond. A moderate centrist-leaning Democrat in the White House will only lead to virtually nothing getting done to make the regular American have an actual chance of working hard and earning their way into a decent, if not better life, and providing a standard of living for the rest of us that isn't bordering on cruel and unusual like it is now. A centrist Democrat in the White House will deflate all of the energy and passion and engagement from the people who didn't care about politics until Trump and people like me who have worked so hard to convince those people that we needed their vote. We needed them to be informed. We will have nothing to show for it, and we won't be able to go back to those same people who were not engaged before in the next election and have the same urgency and be as credible as we do now under a President Biden. What will likely happen is things will calm down in terms of the news coverage being absolute carnage and outrageous. There won't be out as many crazy, outrageous moments. And then those same never-Trumpers, those same centrist establishment Democratic pundits that take up so much of the media today and across the New York Times opinion columns, those people will have played their hands perfectly. And then they will then start using their platforms that they've been building over the past 3 years to move the goalposts to the right even more by attacking a centrist Democrat with a false narrative like they always do. They will attack Joe Biden as too much of a liberal, too far to the left, when you and me know nothing could be farther from the truth. And slowly but surely, we progressives will watch our one great opportunity, this moment that we are in right now, to get the policies that we know will truly change things for society, for every American, and make things a lot more fair than they are now. We will watch that dream die right in front of us, die in our arms. And on top of that, people like us at Trending Left will likely be blamed for it like we already are, every single day, for speaking truth to power and being critical about who our nominee should be. My friends, this is my fight. This is why I started Trending Left. This is why I care about it so much. Please join me in this fight. I cannot tell you how meaningful your support and commitment to the same fight is for the future of our country, for the regular American who has had their quality of life ruined because of a major healthcare event, or because of any event or circumstance that, with the policy ideas we progressives support, would have absolutely been prevented from happening at all. I was 17 years old when Barack Obama became president in 2008. And that is when I first started caring about politics. I was swept up in the inspiration of that time, like many of us were, especially as a naive teenager in the state of Kansas, rural Kansas, among a radical Christian, hardcore right-wing Republican family who is now fully entrenched within the Trump cult. I made my first major published article for a legit print magazine that was entitled President Obama Isn't a Socialist, where I outlined how the ACA or Obamacare wasn't even close to being a form of socialism, especially without the public option. And while the ACA did save my life and millions of other lives because of its protections and the ability to stay on parents' insurance, I have never been blinded by how flawed it was and how its real achievement truly was really only in making sure healthcare was a number one or number two topic in each and every election afterwards. I hope you guys can entrust me to always be an honest broker, an educated, very informed, incredible source of progressive takes on the issues, the policies, and the candidates running for office in every single election, big or small. What separates me from most others who are in this field of political commentary is that I am not afraid of being wrong. I am not afraid of making a mistake. If I make a mistake, I will admit it and learn from it. Because without learning from those mistakes, we would not be as educated and as credible as we are when we speak about the issues today. I welcome the intellectual debate, the dissent, so long as it is fact-based and isn't hurled at me in an aggressive, attacking way. But if it is, be sure that your attacks will fall short of your less than good intentions behind them. So with all that said, I really hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I welcome all of the constructive criticism, as this is my second attempt at doing a legit long-form single voice podcast. And again, if you can support and you really believe in what we're trying to do, not just Trending Left, but everybody like us, if you can support us by donating, it would mean so much to us. And your money is not going to buy anything, for our pleasure or like personal wants. It's simply just to fund our movement and to fund getting the message out from the progressive angle to as many people as possible. There are places in this country where influencing 5 to 7 people out of 100 to vote who normally wouldn't vote would actually be the difference in a local election and a congressional election, which would then have a snowball effect potentially on who becomes the next big time senator, who could then become the next great, really inspiring Democratic presidential nominee. That's the kind of game that the Republicans have been playing for decades. That's where the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, and the Mercers have really taken it to us over the past few decades. And the only way we're going to be able to combat that is having a grassroots movement where all of us are involved. We're all fighting for one another. There can be, a few big time donors, but they have to be ethical ones that really support what the left, what the progressive message is about. That's why so many of our candidates are refusing to take big corporate donors, super PAC money, etc. And that's why Trending Left is so honest in how we want to go about things. And I hope you appreciate that I am open about the costs of everything, because that's just who I am. And that's what the real credible people on the left who who are on these YouTube channels, these podcasts, the blogs that aren't widely distributed, aren't widely known, but are in it for the right reasons. And that is exactly the same that could describe Trending Left. So, with all that said, I would really like to thank all of you who have supported me this far. I know that I can sometimes be kind of overwhelming or just too, and I really want to make sure that people are educated on everything about each candidate going forward and what their policy positions could mean in the future. And that is where the experience that I have of covering politics basically all through the Obama presidency really closely and writing about it in a handful of print publications and many online websites. I think that's what really is why you should trust me and feel good about knowing that by supporting Trending Left, you're supporting the good fight and supporting what most Americans actually would want if they were all informed and educated on all the facts and what they all could mean. All right, well, I'm recording this on Tuesday, July 2nd. I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.